Alright, welcome everyone to another XCOM 2 challenge run. Today we're going to see if we can beat XCOM 2 War of the Chosen using only primary weapons in combat. So what does this mean? Well, every soldier class in XCOM 2 generally has two weapons, a primary and a secondary. And it's really easy to tell which one is which since the game literally labels the slots as primary and secondary. As an example, a specialist's rifle goes in their primary weapon slot, while their gremlin goes in the secondary weapon slot. So any action that requires a specialist to use their gremlin is not allowed. And the same thing goes for the other classes. A ranger's sword, a sharpshooter's pistol, you get the idea. All those things are off limits. I stream most of these challenge runs in full on Twitch, and you can catch the archive streams on my second YouTube channel. Links to both of those are in the description if you're interested. Now for the rules, and there's quite a few of them today. We're playing on veteran difficulty, we're playing on honest man so we can only reload in the events of misclicks or glitches, we can obviously only attack with the soldier's primary weapon, no secondary weapon actions at all. This includes things like healing with the gremlin. No heavy weapons, no PCS upgrades, no utility items with two exceptions. We can use special ammo, this works directly with our primary weapon, so I figure we should allow that, and we can use the Skulljack for story progression. But that's it, all other utility items are out. So there's a few implications here. One is that our options to shred are going to be extremely limited. Grenadiers and Sparks will be our best bets. Similarly, AoE attacks are going to be even more limited. Grenadiers have saturation fire, and our Templar will eventually gain Ionic Storm, but that's pretty much it. And what about destroying cover? The only option we really have is Grenadiers with an awful ability in Demolition that doesn't seem to work half the time. So that's going to be really fun. And I did mention Grenadiers a lot there. I think they're going to be a clutch class for this run, even though we can't actually use grenades, ironically. Now, even Sparks won't be as useful as they normally are, since their heavy weapon and their healing abilities are off limits. Another big concern is that we have zero ways of healing soldiers on the battlefield. We can't use medikits and we can't heal with gremlins. So yeah, I'm expecting there's gonna be casualties along the way. Also, I did consider allowing passive utility items like the Mind Shield, but I decided against it. Even if we're not using an action to activate a utility item in that case, we are still using it. So I decided we just wouldn't use them, and it makes things a bit harder, which most of you seem to enjoy. Also, we're not going to use the Gremlin's long-range hacking ability. If we want to hack something, we have to be right next to it. Now, I am going to allow the grappling hook and the Wraith Suit's running through walls ability. These things are movement-based, they're not combat-based. They're not offensive or defensive abilities, so I think they're fair game, so that's what we're going to go with. And with all that out of the way, let's begin. I've started with the Templars since I think they'll be the most helpful in the early game. I normally like to have Reapers, but without having access to the Claymore, they're not going to be very good until much later when they learn some of their late game skills. Now, the Templars' primary weapon is actually their gauntlets. The mag pistol is their secondary. So we can use melee attacks with our Templar Red Devil, but she'll be the only one, at least for now. And similarly, the gauntlets are also what Templars use for their psionic attacks. So all of her abilities, minus the ones that use the pistol obviously, are available to us. Things like Vault are totally okay. Now this is unlike Psionic operatives, whose Psi-Amp is actually their secondary weapon, so I probably won't even bother training any Psi-Ops in this run. They're gonna be pretty much useless. And the first mission goes off without a hitch. We did take one wound, but that's no big deal. On the strategic layer, I research modular weapons first. Weapon mods get fitted to our primary weapon, so they're allowed. Now I don't bother with any utility items since we can't use them, so at least we've saved ourselves some money in this run, and then I start constructing the GTS since I want to make sure we have plenty of grenadiers available to us. On the second mission, we send Red Devil and 3 rookies. And really quickly, it becomes apparent here that alpha striking isn't always gonna be possible. Like, this sectoid takes full cover once we activate it, and our chance to hit with Lee Sin is a measly 40%. So I figure we're better off just charging in and trying to surround this thing so that we can get a better shot on it on the next turn. But Red Devil just ends up one-shotting it anyway, so the rookies miss out on their chance to shine. Feels bad. The game does drop reinforcements on us, but they're actually force level appropriate, just some basic troopers that we can easily deal with. Normally reinforcements, if they do come on this second mission, are stun lancers or some garbage like that, so this was a pleasant surprise. And the rest of the mission thankfully goes just fine. We get a breakthrough research for modular cannons. This will allow us to equip an extra weapon mod to our grenadiers' primary weapons. This should be super helpful since we're going to have a lot of grenadiers. Next up is the Horde mission, and the downed soldier is none other than cannon fodder. There's no way we can leave our boy out there, so 2 of our rookies bravely charge into the undead legions. I sent in 2, fully expecting we would lose one of them, but they actually both make it out, with the scientist and cannon fodder in one piece. This went really well. Now, we obviously couldn't use the usual strat of blowing up the entranceways to the building with grenades, seeing as we can't use grenades, so we didn't stick around to farm any XP. On the retaliation mission, I deployed Red Devil, a ranger, and 2 grenadiers. I deliberately kept Red Devil at the base for the previous mission so that her will would be recovered for this one. She'll do extra damage to whatever chosen that we're going up against, so we definitely need her here, given how limited our options are going to be. And as far as the chosen go, I really just don't want the assassin. Alright, please not the assassin, please not the assassin, please not the assassin. Oh, come on! Why? Why is it always assassin? Of course it's her. The amount of times this game throws the absolute worst chosen at me for the challenge I'm doing is uncanny. It's like my copy of XCOM 2 has become self-aware and wants to punish me. Now, the reason I didn't want the assassin is because it's really hard to flank her. She's always running around with a super high mobility, and hitting her through full cover is gonna be very difficult for us. Now, even worse, one of her strengths is kinetic plating. So if we do shoot and miss, we're gonna give her shield points. At least she's not immune to melee, so that's something in our favour, but we got really unlucky here. Now, things get even worse when we're accosted by a pod and the assassin at the same time. Thankfully, the priest took cover next to an explosive structure, so it's gone with one shot. Shockwave is able to revive Drifter, who's been attacked by the assassin, and take out the trooper. So the pod is now gone, let's get the assassin. Red Devil does big damage with Rend, but then I'm not sure where to move her to. The area behind the assassin looks like the best cover, but there's a few civilians there, and I'm betting at least one of them is a faceless. Yep, told ya. The assassin thankfully doesn't target Red Devil and instead hits a blinding grenade on 2 of our soldiers. That leaves Red Devil to finish the big blue lady off on the next turn. And did you know you can't pick up loot with a blinded soldier? I mean, I guess it makes sense since they probably can't see it on the ground, but I don't think I knew that. Anyway, parry keeps Red Devil safe from the faceless, and on our next turn, it's done. We win. And here Red Devil picks up Sustain as a hidden ability. It's not as good as something like Bladestorm, but given we can't heal on the tactical layer, this is actually a pretty good skill to have on this run. It'll mean we can use Red Devil as a human mimic beacon. Sorry, we can use Red Devil as a tank and not have to worry about her being taken out. At least not the first time, she'll always survive on 1 HP. It's not until the 28th of March in-game that I realise I've had my engineer sitting in the Avenger doing nothing since the GTS was built. This was quite the blunder on my part. Anyway, we begin excavating, better late than never. And time for the first supply raid. The good news is we can field 5 soldiers now. The bad news is the Savage sitrep is active. Right, so that means we're back to 4 soldiers. So I guess it's all just bad news now. And normally the Savage sitrep is a good thing to get on this mission since it gives us multiple early game Mimic beacons that we shouldn't have access to, but given that we can't use Mimic beacons on this run, this is all just downside. Dealing with these faceless is not going to be easy. So the 4 surviving soldiers encounter the final pod of 3 faceless. I'm hoping we can take down 2 of them, and barring another crit, we shouldn't lose any more soldiers. Well, Hard Viper, so many jokes I could make there, but I won't. I'm a mature and sophisticated man. Anyway, Hard Viper misses an 85% shot, so our chance of eliminating 2 faceless here is now about 0. We do take a hit, but thankfully no more fatalities. We're then able to clean up the faceless on our next turn, and this one is a victory. With the resistance ring finally built, we have a covert op to give our cannons +1 damage, and I'm loving how many buffs our grenadiers are getting on this run. We're gonna need it. We also score a lot of covert ops that give promotions as rewards. This allows us to level up Red Devil to Major really quickly, so we can go and hunt the Assassin, plus get the squad size 2 upgrade quite early on. Despite that though, we do get into a bit of trouble on this Guerrilla op. We've got 1 turn until the objective expires, so we're going to have to move in. The only problem is, moving in will activate this pod of a Viper and 2 sectoids. Now, our Ranger Task Manager is still in concealment thanks to Phantom, and I've given all our Rangers Phantom in this one since Blade Master is completely useless to us, so I figure we might as well take a shot at the Viper before it activates, this way it's not in cover. And of course, we miss. Now we are able to take down one of the sectoids, but things go well and truly downhill from here. A Captain, Stun Lancer and Purifier drop in as reinforcements, the Viper binds Task Manager, and our Specialist, BFG, gets mind controlled by the sectoid. So we're now down to 4 soldiers going up against 6 enemies. Let's see how we go. Our Sharpshooter Meme fires at the Stun Lancer. Now he misses, but we do knock the floor out from under the Lancer and it takes some fall damage. Hard Viper wipes out the Viper, which is appropriate I guess, so now Task Manager is back. Christmas finishes the Stun Lancer off, Task Manager then scores a clutch critical hit and one-shots the sectoid, then Bond, nicknamed James, one-shots the Purifier as well. And now that we have BFG back on our side, he obliterates the Captain. Now that was quite the comeback if I do say so myself. Which I do. We went from 4 to 6 to 6 to 0. That is insane. And also, this made me realise something that seems really obvious in retrospect. I had been giving our specialists the combat protocol ability at corporal rank. It was between that and medical protocol. We can't use either ability, so I just picked one at random. But this mission opened my eyes to the fact that if one of those specialists gets mind controlled, they could use combat protocol against us. So in these situations where both level up abilities cannot be used, I should be picking the least dangerous one just in case of an unlucky mind control or shadowbound. Then we have another supply raid, and I've been meaning to Skulljack a captain for ages, but I just kept forgetting to equip the Skulljack to any of the soldiers. And I think it's partly because we're not using utility items in this run, so I don't even think to check what the soldiers are equipped with. But I've finally remembered, and Cannon Fodder is ready to charge a captain on the front line. Who else could do this noble task? And the good thing about taking so long to encounter a codex is that Drifter actually has blue screen rounds by this stage, so when it does spawn in, it's an easy one-shot. The assassin did deploy on this mission, and I've been waiting ages for her to ambush us, but she's just not appearing. And these lost supply raid missions in particular seem to do weird things to her AI. So most of the loot boxes have been claimed either by us or the bad guys, and there doesn't seem to be any Advent forces left on the field, so I decide instead of waiting around for her, we're just going to rush to the last of the boxes and evac out. She's clearly not interested in fighting us.
Okay, this is bad.
Right, never mind. I guess she was just waiting for us to let our guard down. Well played, assassin. Now Drifter is dazed again, and she's summoned in a mech. Plus, you can see how far she's run away. She's on the second floor of a building and completely beyond our line of sight. There's nothing we can do against her here. She can be really deadly on these city maps. So with all this in mind, I decide instead of collecting the last loot box, we'll just evac right now. You actually only have to claim one in order to win the mission, so we're fine. The problem is, Drifter cannot make it to the evac zone. He's underneath the train tracks, so this is as close as we could set it too, and he just cannot move that far thanks to his disorientation. So I move Drifter out of line of sight of the enemies by cowering in this corner, and Cannon Fodder, living up to his namesake once again, stays for a turn while the rest of the squad evacs out. I spread both Drifter and Cannon Fodder out, thinking if the assassin does daze one of them, the other can assist before we flee. Unfortunately, the mech does get line of sight back again on Drifter and is suppressing him. However, in really good news, the assassin didn't attack us. I guess her AI is messed up once again. So Cannon Fodder can interrupt the suppression, and then both our soldiers make it out. We got really lucky not to lose anybody on this one. If the assassin had come back for round 2, we would have been in major trouble. Now sadly, as a result of this encounter, Drifter has picked up a fear of the Chosen, and given how much she's targeting him on these missions, I can't say I blame him. We get a research breakthrough for +1 damage on our mag weapons, and I could not have asked for a better breakthrough. This is awesome. Then we reach the Hunter's territory. His strengths are Beastmaster, Watchful, and Low Profile. His weaknesses are Shell-Shocked and Reapers. This is really bad for us. He has 3 absolutely brutal strengths, and we're not going to be able to utilize Shell-Shocked at all. Fortunately, he randomly hides in front of a streetlight for some reason. We blow it up with Demolition and start laying into him. And I actually used Demolition twice in this mission, and it worked both times. I honestly don't think that has ever happened before in the 6 years I've been playing this game. Now, even though the Hunter is no longer in cover, Low Profile is still making it quite difficult to hit him. But that doesn't stop our troops as we land every single attack that we make on this guy. The squad did really well here. We do get grenaded by a trooper. It came down as a reinforcement, and he's hiding underneath us. Only one soldier could even get line of sight, so there wasn't much we could do to stop him. Thankfully, the damage is pretty minimal, and everyone makes it out in one piece. We then have a guerrilla op, and we want to stop the Collector's Dark event. This will make the Chosen more aggressive in trying to capture our soldiers. I think the way it works is that it eliminates the chance of the Chosen simply interrogating a soldier, and instead guarantees a kidnapping if they get their hands on one of your troops. Now this is a really bad dark event. I normally try to avoid it. The good news is the Horde sitrep is active, so only lost on this one for us to worry about. And we've also picked up a spark in the form of Julian by this stage. But this mission, well, there's a recurring theme on this one, and it begins with Metla missing a 90% point blank shot. Or how about Hard Viper missing this 87% shot? Or how about Leeson missing a 97%? Or perhaps Bob Dixon missing an 83%? Unlike the last mission where our squad did really well, these people seem to be completely incompetent, and we are getting swarmed by Lost because of it. So I send out Julian. But the problem is, he doesn't yet have the adaptive aim ability, so once I activate Overdrive, his accuracy begins quickly dropping. to the point that what was a 100% hit chance at the start of the turn is now only a 45%. So needless to say, we miss the shot. But that's not a big deal. It's not just that we miss. The real problem is that the shot apparently hits the truck behind the Lost, and then this happens.
Taking heavy fire!
So yeah, Julian really messed this one up, and I'd like you to remember this moment as we proceed in the video. We get sabotaged by the assassin, and 4 of our troops pick up Fear of the Chosen as a trait. Including Drifter, that's now 5 soldiers who have it. And the part that really sucks about this is that we're ready to assault the assassin's stronghold. I obviously don't want to send any soldiers that may lose their mind at the sheer sight of her, because she's gonna spawn in multiple times. So we're pretty limited with what troops we can send. And we all know what happened the last time I went into a chosen stronghold underprepared. Hopefully things go better this time. Well, we open this door and we find ourselves face to face with a berserker and 3 mutons. Now that's a pretty terrifying pod given we're still fielding mostly low level soldiers. Red Devil is the exception, she's a major thanks to covert op promotions, but everyone else is a bit of a noob. We take out everything except this last muton. I use demolition and it does actually work, but it takes out the wrong piece of cover, so we still don't have a flanking shot, and we can't finish it off. The muton hits Julian and actually shuts him down for a turn. It's not a big deal as the rest of the squad can easily finish it on our turn, but Julian has taken some damage and we have no way of healing him. And we've still got a long way to go in this mission. This is not good. And speaking of not good, then we come across a pod of chrysalids. Now it seems way too early in the game for these things, seeing as we just met our first berserker on this very same mission. And aren't chrysalids meant to spawn way later than berserkers? Whatever, we'll do our best. We take an 87% shot with Bond and we get a dodge. We then take a 95% shot with Julian and we miss. So yeah, our best is going really well. Thankfully our skirmisher Grim can shoot twice and get us out of this jam. If one of these things had managed to poison us, we just have to send the soldier back to the Avenger, as we have no way of healing, and their health would just get sucked away until they were gone. In the final chamber, we're able to locate the assassin quite quickly, which is good, but most of the squad is going to have to shoot through full cover, which is bad. And Red Devil is too far away to rend, which is really bad. Now luckily Hard Viper has holo targeting, so we start with him and he does actually hit. We then use Overdrive with Julian and he's thankfully able to make 2 96% shots. I was honestly worried about this after the chrysalids. A mech and Spectre warp in before we can finish the sarcophagus, and unfortunately we just can't quite take it out on the next turn either. It has about 3 HP remaining. Now Bond can still fire, and we could shoot at the sarcophagus, or we can destroy the mech. Now I opt for the mech, seeing as a few of our soldiers are flanked. This means we get more reinforcements in the form of a berserker and muton, plus the Spectre has shadowbound Red Devil. And what's even worse is the Spectre has taken up perfect full cover in an unflankable position. This is spiraling out of control really quickly. So I don't normally bother taking out the shadowbound clone, but I do here. This will revive Red Devil, who can yellow dash to the Spectre and finish it off with Rend. And I didn't see any other way that we were going to be able to take this thing out. We also get the Berserker and the sarcophagus, but the muton survives. Plus the assassin, who's now back to 60% HP, has appeared and then disappeared immediately. Now the muton hits Julian with a grenade and our big mech boy is slowly running out of health. Also, due to a combination of having to focus on destroying the Muton, being too far away, or having to reload our weapon, we only land a single attack on the assassin this turn. I placed 2 soldiers in a line hoping to bait a harbour wave. Now this may seem like a crazy plan, but we can probably finish her off in 2 more attacks, so we can afford to lose a couple of soldiers to daze. And harbour wave has the advantage that it won't take any HP away from us. However, the assassin is too smart and she instead attacks Red Devil, literally the worst thing that she could have done as we now can't hit Rend. So we're able to finish the mech the assassin summoned, but she survives for another turn. Now thankfully she only goes for a blinding grenade on Julian. I have no idea how such a grenade would work on a robot, but it only reduces line of sight. It doesn't actually lower accuracy as far as I can tell. So Julian is still able to get into point blank range and finish her off. This was really close, but we did it. And we didn't even lose anyone. But you can see we have taken some decent injuries. It's a high price to pay, but having an assassin-free world is worth it, I think. Or at least I did think that before we get hit with a retaliation mission about 5 seconds after the stronghold assault is finished. I'm trying to hit this captain, and Julian misses a 77% shot. Now that's pretty reasonable, but then Outrider can also take a shot. Now even though the game tells us 80%, my understanding is that a flat 15% bonus to hit is secretly applied after a missed shot. Now I know it's different between Veteran and Commander, but I've modded my game to take Commander aim buffs. So Outrider actually has a 95% chance to hit despite what the game is telling us, and we still miss. Now this causes Julian to take even more damage from the captain. Given he was already on diminished HP from the stronghold, this is really bad. One more hit and he's gone. And then check this out. Julian has an 80% to hit the Berserker, and not only does he miss, but his shot hits the tower that Task Manager was standing in and sends the whole thing collapsing down. So now Task Manager has not only taken fall damage, but he's also flanked. Now at this point, I'm starting to think Julian is a double agent. So out of this pot of 3, we've been able to take down exactly 0 enemies. I move Julian behind a structure as one more hit will take him out. Well, it doesn't help. This Muton somehow lobs a grenade that hits both our soldiers on top of the structure and Julian on ground level. I didn't think this was possible, but apparently it is. And Julian is gone. But you know what? I don't even care. I know we sunk a lot of resources into getting him, not to mention the weapon and armor upgrades, but this robot has been nothing but problems from the get-go. Good riddance, onto the scrap heap of life with you, Julian. Fortunately, we can eliminate the pod without taking any more losses, but then we just immediately have another pod activate on us. And we're stuck on this crummy bridge with barely any cover. Plus they've got a stun lancer which could easily finish almost anyone on our squad since most of them are nearly out of HP. So we take down the Berserker, but the stun lancer is in full cover. I've placed Outrider at the front of the squad. She's the only one on full health, so is the only person who even has a chance of surviving a melee from that lancer. So she's going to have to take one for the team here. Or possibly not. As if this mission wasn't crazy enough, Drifter pulls out a clutch 40% shot to wipe out the Lancer in a single blow. This mission is the most ridiculous that I've played in quite some time. We can't make multiple 80% shots, but we do make the 40%? That's XCOM, I guess. Now the shield bearer only activates its shield, which is what I was hoping for, and a remote start on the next turn easily takes it out. And we can use remote start since it's triggered by the Reaper's rifle. It's allowed. The last faceless mercifully spawns quite a distance away, so we can easily finish it before it can attack. That one was a roller coaster. However, the next mission gets even crazier than that one. And we'll just start by looking at the roster we have available. Almost everyone is either wounded, tired, or on a covert op. And of the few soldiers we do have available, some of them are specialists. Now, minus their Overwatch abilities, which we haven't unlocked yet, specialists can't really do anything in this run. They're basically just rookies but with better stats. So amongst our non-specialist soldiers, the ones who have abilities we might be able to use, all of them are either corporals or squaddies. So there's not a lot of abilities to use there. Now the Lost are on this mission, so I'm hoping they can serve as some living mimic beacons for us. Plus, there's an extra 2 soldiers we can pick up during the mission, so they may be able to provide us some extra firepower. Initially, I'm trying to stay in concealment and have Advent and the Lost activate against each other, but it's just not happening. Advent simply refuse to patrol into the Lost, so we're going to have to kick this one off ourselves. We take out one Muton in this pod, but the other one runs pretty far away, so taking him out is going to require going down to ground level. Now I don't want to go down to ground level, because who knows what else is out there, but if I let him live, he could grenade us and send the whole team down to ground level in the most violent way possible. So I'm forced to send Metla down, and of course he activates a second pod, and this one has a mech. We use a couple of specialists to get the flank on the Muton. BFG misses a 69%, but this gives Cannon Fodder the aim boost he needs to not only hit the Muton, but one-shot it with a crit. Cannon Fodder is holding it down here. We're also able to activate one of the reward soldiers in Milo Murphy. He gets the Spectre down to 1 HP, but unfortunately can't finish it off. And check out the animation here as the Spectre uses Shadowbound on Milo. It pulls his gun out of his hands and looks like it's twisting his arm to the point of breaking it. I guess it didn't appreciate being shot in the face like that. Thankfully the Stun Lancer targets are lost and the mech misses its shot on Metla, but now a Sectoid and Viper trigger to also join the battle. This is quickly getting out of hand. I use our Sharpshooter Holiday to fire against the mech, but it hangs on with 1 HP. There's a bit of that going around on this one. Now we are able to take down the Spectre that cloned Milo, so we get him back, and he does help Cowboy take down a 10 HP lost Brute, which was really clutch. Those things can do big damage if they hit, but of course Cowboy immediately ruins it by missing the next 87% shot. I move Metla in to take out the Stun Lancer, and once again he activates another pod, so I'm pretty sure every Advent unit on the map is now active, and Metla is surrounded by almost all of them, plus some Lost, so I just fall back into the building with him. If I leave him out there, I don't see any way that he's gonna survive. The mech does big damage on Holiday, but the rest of the Advent forces thankfully focus on the Lost instead of us. On our turn, BFG finds himself surrounded by Lost. I hope to clean up a few of them, but his first shot at 97% is a miss, so his turn is over instantly. I don't like your chances, BFG, I gotta be honest here. I send Metla up to the second floor, hoping he can get in position next turn to help us out. He's not going to be much help on this turn though. Then I use Milo to thin out some of the loss that BFG failed to do, and Milo is an absolute boss. Not only is he making shots, he's rolling higher than minimum damage to rack up the kills that we need too. And Cowboy makes up for his incompetence last turn by making a 68% shot on the Stun Lancer and getting a crit to one-shot it. We're also able to take out the mech, but there's still plenty of dangerous enemies left on the board. On Advent's turn, a Muton targets Holiday, and because of her already low health, she goes into bleed out. Now there's absolutely no way we'll be able to get someone to reach the evac with her in time, so she's as good as dead unfortunately. The Sectoid targets BFG and disorients him, the Archon has gone for Blazing Pinions, but that's not a big deal, and the rest of Advent have thankfully focused on the Lost. We begin our next turn by missing a 90% shot on the Viper. This forces me to move Cannon Fodder in to take it out, and of course we get a dodge so it survives. This mission just does not want us to succeed. Meanwhile, the Muton is able to hit Milo through full cover. Yeah, that sounds about right. We can't make a 90% shot, but this thing can hit us through full cover. And since Blazing Pinions has destroyed Cannon Fodder's cover, he goes down too. So at this point I decide it's every man, woman and child for themselves. We just have to rush to the evac as quickly as we can. If we can break line of sight, Advent will most likely focus on the Lost. This may give us the distraction that we need in order to escape. So BFG, Cowboy and Milo are running down the right side of the map, while Christmas, Metla and the VIP head down the left side. And look at this, the sectoid wasn't satisfied with just killing cannon fodder, it resurrects him as a zombie to fight against us. This is a godless display. Thankfully, a Lost ends the sectoid and cannon fodder can again return to his slumber. Cowboy and BFG are the first to make it to the evac zone. Meanwhile, Milo comes under an unending barrage of fire, and he does survive for a ridiculously long time, but eventually a muton fells him. This guy was one of the most useful on the mission, and he wasn't even part of XCOM. And these guys coming under fire has drawn Advent away from the left side of the map, so the VIP is pretty safe, at least for now. And we even pick up the other extra soldier and group farmer along the way. Having some extra firepower comes in very handy when the Lost start spawning on top of us. And speaking of Lost spawning in on top of us, Metla misses a 90% shot on this Lost literally right in front of his face. Now he's at the back of the group. I do consider sending someone back there to help him, but by this stage the soldiers on the right side have either fled or fallen, so Advent is no doubt making a beeline on our position. We don't have the luxury of staying back to help Metla, we have to push on. Metla got himself into this mess, he's gonna have to get himself out of it. The VIP, Christmas and Group Farmer are able to make it out, but because Metla is a turn behind the rest of the group, the second Spectre catches up with him and hits a Shadowbound. So Metla missing that 90% literally made the difference between him making it out alive and not. And I honestly don't feel bad, he did it to himself. So what a crazy mission. We gained 1 soldier, but we lost 3. 4 if you include Milo. Now Metla is only captured, so we may be able to get him back later in the campaign, but this was a really brutal battle. The worst I've had in quite some time. And as you would probably expect, our roster is really depleted after all these horrible missions. Now thankfully the infirmary is done, so we can cut those healing times in half, plus we can begin the long process of removing Fear of the Chosen from all the people who have it. We soon expand into the Warlock's territory. His strengths are Regeneration, All-Seeing, and Shogun. These are some really bad abilities. His weaknesses are Skirmishes and Brittle. Brittle we may be able to exploit, so that's good at least. And the next mission is about as messed up as the previous. We begin by moving Leeson, and he immediately gets spotted by this civilian. Now a few things are going on here. Firstly, I have no idea how none of the soldiers could see this guy. He's literally standing out in the open. The second is that his detection radius seems to be broken. Looking at the red squares, he's not standing in the middle of them. I don't think he should have been able to spot us based on this. Now I didn't really notice the issue until after the stream when I went back to look at the footage. Otherwise I might have reloaded, but regardless, we have been monumentally screwed over here. And for regular viewers, you can probably guess why I'm about to fail the run by using a utility item. So yeah, using a grenade is breaking one of the rules, but it wasn't against Advent, so I think it's fine. I'm gonna ignore this and continue with the run. Plus, this guy had it coming. But as we continue, we are left in a horrible position. We're not gonna be able to use concealment to get the jump on the first pod. Now we do have 2 concealment ranges, so they can at least push ahead and serve as scouts. But remember what I said about just encountering the Warlock? Well, that means he's a guaranteed spawn on this mission. So have a guess what his zombies do to our ranges the instant that he spawns them in. Yeah, they blow our concealment. So now we have 0 scouting capacity. And I know I could have overwatched with the other soldiers, they might have been able to take the zombies out before we lost our cover on our ranges, but that would have meant not being able to move as quickly. We do have a lot of ground to cover with the Chosen to get through while we do it, so we can't afford to overwatch creep, we need to be moving quickly. Plus, there's no guarantee the Overwatch shots will actually connect anyway. And it is worth noting, if we were still concealed and we hadn't run into that civilian, the Warlock wouldn't have spawned yet and there wouldn't be any zombies to worry about. So in the first pod, we take out a heavy mech and shield bearer. I opt not to attack the Archon. We won't be able to finish it off even if we do attack, and if we damage it, it'll go into frenzy mode and attack us. If we leave it on full HP, it'll most likely go for blazing pinions, which we can easily avoid. And then of course, on the next turn, we miss an 89% shot, then Lee Sin makes a 75% shot, and again, thanks to secret aim buffs, it's actually a 90% chance to hit, and he misses too. BFG then misses his shot, and the hidden buff will now be giving him a 95% chance to hit. And finally, when we do hit with Cowboy, we get a dodge and the Archon survives. The Archon, on the other hand, well, it gets a crit on Drifter and hits him for 11 damage, leaving him on a mere 2 HP. So one more hit and Drifter is gone. And it's times like this that I consider dedicating my channel to a different game. Now that's a joke, but this was so incredibly frustrating. The game takes our concealment away from us, and makes our soldiers blind, so it is impossible to even defend ourselves. And as cringe as all this is, things are about to get much worse. Lee Sin shoots again and we get another dodge. Thankfully the Archon's health is so low by this point that it goes down regardless, but my goodness, this thing was some garbage. Now we're running really short on time, so we need to start yellow dashing. This means some soldiers with empty magazines can't even reload their weapons. We just have to move as fast as we can. When we finally arrive at the building housing the Dark VIP, we meet a pod that takes cover on the other side of the structure. There's also zombies inside the building, so there's no way we can alpha strike all these bad guys this turn, especially when multiple troops still need to reload their guns. A captain and purifier survive, but they thankfully don't really do anything. The captain does mark Volpez, but it doesn't even shoot at her, it just goes on Overwatch, and the purifier just sprays flames at nothing. So that's good. However, the Warlock is apparently active now and a mind scorches Volpez. Seeing as cannon fodder is no longer with us, Lee Sin, you're gonna have to run the Overwatch. Now he does that and loses almost half his health, but at least he's able to remove the daze from Volpez, so that's a good thing. When we take down the Purifier on our next turn, it blows up, and this was actually really clutch. The explosion has taken out a large chunk of the building, which is going to make it much easier for us to reach the Warlock. And also, since the Warlock is active, the turn timer has stopped counting down. So we are getting some positives as well. It's just hard to appreciate them with all the nonsense that has happened. I also shoot the VIP here, as Volpez can't really do anything else useful this turn, and I figure getting out of this situation alive is going to be difficult enough, let alone trying to carry an unconscious VIP with us. Meanwhile, Lee Sin makes a clutch 50% shot and the captain goes down, so it's just us and the Warlock. At least until he summons in a stun lancer and mind controls Volpez. This is really bad. Even worse, old Talkie Boy has teleported the stun lancer onto the roof, so there's not really any way we can take it out on our turn. I decide to ignore the stun lancer and focus on the Warlock. And when you're in the position of having to ignore a stun lancer, that's when you know things are really bad. But if Volpez is able to get a point blank shot on someone, she could do massive damage, so we really need to get to the Warlock and stop this mind control. Now, as if all of this wasn't terrible enough, Advent drops reinforcements in too. Oh, and the stun lancer knocks Task Manager unconscious, so that's even better. Now, we have damaged the Warlock, so he summons his stasis boys. The good news is that by doing this, it frees Volpez of mind control. The bad news, of course, is that now we have 2 spectral stun lancers to deal with, on top of the 2 regular ones. I consider just evacing, but it'll mean leaving both Task Manager and Drifter behind, so I'd rather not. Now the Purifier survives, but thankfully wastes all its turns on movement. The Spectral Stun Lancers have also survived, and they do attack, dazing both Vulpes and BFG. I'm not able to move anyone close enough to Vulpes, so she's going to have to stay dazed, but we do get BFG back. We take out the Spectrals, but the Purifier is out of line of sight. We can't get to him. This means he comes back next turn and drops an incendiary grenade on Lee Sin and BFG. Now the Warlock, interestingly, doesn't attack. I think he was trying to reach Vulpes, so leaving her dazed may have actually been a good thing. Lee Sin and BFG need to hunker down on the next turn to put out the flames engulfing them, otherwise they're not going to survive, so that's 2 soldiers who can't help us. Once we revive Vulpes, she does have run and gun, so despite only having 1 action point, she can still move to get line of sight on the Purifier and blow it up in a glorious one-shot. Thank goodness for that. The Warlock only moves again on his turn. He did lose line of sight on the squad, but I'm not sure why he couldn't move and attack. Whatever, it's the only thing keeping us alive at this point, so I shouldn't be questioning it. And you can see he has almost all his health back thanks to regeneration. This mission is the embodiment of pain. Now we're finally able to get in
close range
and exploit Brittle, and thanks to this, we wipe out the Warlock in 2 hits. We're then able to grab Task Manager and head to the evac zone. Everyone got out, but this mission sucked. The game really has it in for me this run. I soon decide to hit the Blacksite. That was the whole point of taking out the assassin quickly so that we could do this mission without her showing up to ruin our day. I've built another spark in the form of Arnie by now. Hopefully he proves more helpful than the last one. I've also equipped Shockwave with the Assassin's Shotgun, which should hopefully come in very handy. Now this mission isn't the easiest. We have a pod of 3 codexes, as well as another one of a Captain and Purifier that we have to deal with at the same time. Plus I've had to bring some low-level soldiers since we've taken so many injuries. And I could have just waited until the barracks was healthier to do the mission, but that's what I was doing, and everything just keeps going wrong. We just keep getting more injuries, never less. By this point, I'm afraid if we wait until the barracks is healthy, we're gonna be waiting forever. So we really just need to get in and get this one done. Andromedons will be appearing soon, and I want the Blacksite dealt with before that happens. And before we're even finished with the first 2 pods, another one shows up. Now Red Devil, our most powerful soldier, gets reduced to 4 HP. Now she does have sustain, so she should be okay, but things certainly aren't going well here. And it's really just thanks to more bad luck. Having so many pods clustered so close together is making things very difficult. But once we're able to push through the initial onslaught, the rest of the mission goes pretty smoothly. We can use Outrider to scout the remaining pods and get the drop on them. By doing this, we take them out fairly easily. Now this was definitely much more challenging than the Blacksite usually is, but we didn't lose anybody. It does, however, mean even more injuries in the barracks. The good news is Red Devil is now a Colonel. I spend a massive amount of AP to grab all 3 of her Colonel level abilities. Ionic Storm and Ghost are always really good to have. I don't normally bother with Void Conduit, but in this run I think it'll be the only option we have to counter the Avatar's teleportation, so it seems like a good investment. We have a Guerrilla Op next, and I'm equipping pretty much everyone with blue screen rounds at this point. They're the only utility item we can use, so I figure let's use them to maximum effect. I have started building some experimental rounds in the Proving Grounds as well. Andromedons are deploying now, just as I suspected, but Drifter sends the first one to its shell form with a single chain shot. Very nice. We also have Steve, the Advent Defector, joining us here thanks to a Continental bonus. There's no issue using double agents on this run, provided we only use their primary weapon. Now even though we take out a lot of the Advent forces quite easily, it does take time to do it. So by the time we reach the objective to hack it, we've only got 2 turns remaining on the timer. Then on the next turn, we get reinforcements dropping in. We take them out easily enough, but then the remaining 2 pods activate at once. And since we've blown up so much of the train, we don't have a good position or any good cover. The enemies, meanwhile, have excellent positioning and cover. So I figure, given we've already stopped the Dark event, this fight just isn't worth it. The reward is only an engineer, which we don't really need by this point in the game, and sticking around is just going to mean more injuries, or even worse, so we just evac out. I send Shockwave and Red Devil on a covert op, and pretty much straight after, the Hunter UFO finds us. So we're doing this one with 2 of our strongest soldiers absent. I knew the UFO was looking for us before I sent them, but again, if I waited to send them on the mission until after the UFO has found us, who knows how long the wait would be. So hopefully we can pull this one off without them. Once again, it's the King of the Hill map. This is the only map I've had for these types of missions since I installed my map mod. I may have to uninstall it as I am getting kinda tired of this layout. Anyway, I accidentally overwatched with Icicle's pistol on this one, so I did have to reload there. Now I played the turn pretty much exactly the same when I reloaded, and, well, it's not a good turn. This pod comes over the rise and blows Outrider's concealment. Now this, in turn, activates 2 other pods that she was scouting, and one of those pods consists entirely of chrysalids. So this is really quite dreadful. We take out as many enemies as we can, but a priest, spectre, and 2 chrysalids survive. The spectre clones Drifter, but thankfully the rest of the enemies don't attack. They just make a beeline for the Avenger. Now this was really good, since getting poisoned by the chrysalids here would pretty much be a death sentence for any of our human soldiers. And this turn also made me think, because the priest got pretty close to the Avenger. Now if a priest made it onto the platform and then went into stasis when you attacked them, that would be a game over situation. So definitely don't let these guys get anywhere close to the Avenger. A new pod soon shows up, and we're not able to get the second priest, and it mind controls a skirmisher Grim, so bringing the defector back to their original side through mind control. You might say that's pretty grim. So once the priest is dealt with, we push forward to the disruptor. We get line of sight with Outrider, who is back in concealment, and then the sharpshooters can use squad sight to destroy it. Making our way back to the Avenger does take time, as we're constantly having to fend off Advent reinforcements, but we do make it there, and something really weird happens when we do. See, in the top right corner, the game tells you how many soldiers still need to get back to the Avenger. So basically this means if we were to take off right now, that's the number of soldiers who will get left behind. Now that's all well and good, but our number is at -1 for some reason. And when I move our last trooper onto the platform, it changes to -2. So does this mean I'm going to get 2 free soldiers if we take off now? I don't know. This is weird. I don't remember ever seeing this before, but let's just get out of here. And the mission is actually flawless. Now that was mostly due to the turn where Advent ignored us to run to the Avenger instead. They could have done serious damage to us there if they wanted to, but we got lucky. However, given this run is the way that it is, that good luck will not last long. Literally, as soon as we return to the geoscape, there's another UFO hunting us. Yeah, this one's been activated by a dark event, so we may have to do this mission all over again at any moment. And that is going to cripple our already exhausted roster. What even is this run? Well, there's not really any time to worry about answering that question, as we've got a guerrilla op. Now we've disarmed the explosive device when this pod of a Codex and 2 Advent soldiers patrol into us. Since there's no turn timers to worry about, I figure this is a good opportunity to Skulljack the Codex. I'm really wanting to progress the story research since we've been hit with so many setbacks this run, we need to get things back on track. So I opt to leave the Codex alive for a turn since I want a full turn with the whole team having all their action points so that we can deal with the avatar that will spawn in. Now of course the Codex is going to go for a Psionic bomb. Bond has had his weapon disabled, but he's using the Skulljack, so that's no worries. And then I use Void Conduit with Red Devil to hold the avatar in place. And after 2 attacks, it's left on only 1 HP. I try to hit it with Meme, but he misses. Now Drifter is the only one with any actions left. His weapon was jammed thanks to the codex, so if I want to reload and shoot, he's going to take damage from the Psionic bomb. But if I move and reload, we can't finish the avatar. Now I'm not sure if Void Conduit will keep the avatar in place on its turn or not. I really don't use this ability very often. But given how dangerous avatars can be, I don't want to find out. So I figure if Drifter can kill this thing, the mission should end before he takes any damage from the Psionic bomb. So let's take the shot and see how we go. Well, we do hit, which is really great news. However, the game makes sure to deliver the Psionic bomb damage and then give us the mission complete screen, just to make sure I take as much damage as possible, I guess. But everyone is alive, so it's not a big deal, it's just annoying. The Hunter UFO then engages, but we're thankfully able to avoid it. No second base defense for us, which is really good. Then we head to the Hunter's base, and the nonsense continues with the very first pod. This Andromedon and Sectoid walk through a wall to get the drop on us. Now I know Andromedons can walk through some walls, but not the walls in the chosen strongholds, at least not normally. And I was pretty salty about this until I realised they move next to an explosive container that will make a gargantuan explosion with remote start. So we actually take out this pod quite easily. We keep pushing forward and we make our way to the final chamber. There's a stun lancer and a priest waiting for us, and they're in a really bad position, so the priest is still alive when the hunter spawns in. As a general rule, you always want to eliminate the first pod before you get too close to the sarcophagus and bring in the chosen. Unfortunately here, we just didn't have that option. The priest had mind-controlled Red Devil, so we needed to move in and take it out as quickly as possible, and that of course spawned in the hunter before we were ready. So we send the priest into stasis, which breaks the mind control. I charge in with Red Devil on the hunter, only to realise that he has melee immunity. For some reason, I thought it was the Warlock that had that one. Oops. So the hunter and the priest both survive for another turn. The hunter hits Hard Viper with a tranquilizer dart, which is honestly fine. I just didn't want him to use his rifle and cause bleed on one of our soldiers. There would have been nothing we could do for them, and it likely would have been a death sentence. So luckily, that didn't happen. Once the hunter is gone, it takes us a couple of turns to destroy the sarcophagus, but the reinforcements don't bother us too much. Now a codex does survive and psionic bombs us, but we still have enough people with working weapons to bring down the hunter. I mean, it only takes a single shot from Shockwave. Hunter's Instinct plus the Assassin's Shotgun is a pretty deadly combination. So we win this one, and it was much easier than the Assassin's base. We then have a landed UFO to raid, but most of our high-level soldiers are tired, so we're going in with some low levels on this one. And thanks to the Shadow Chamber telling me that an enemy unknown will be on this mission, I know that we're going to be facing off against a sector pod. Now my plan is to save Overdrive with Arnie, so we'll have it to use against the sector pod when we find it. However, that plan quickly goes out the window when the first pod we encounter is made up of 3 Archons. We don't have any abilities that can shoot multiple times apart from Overdrive, so we're going to need to use it now. These things have a lot of HP. Now things soon get even worse when a captain from the second pod sends Leeson into bleed out. And because of this, when the sector pod does show up inside the UFO, we only have 3 troops who can attack it. Now 2 of them can shred, and 2 of them have blue screen rounds. So it was close, but between the 3 soldiers, we actually end up taking it down in 1 turn. However, we're not able to take out the 2 Advent soldiers that were with it, so they're going to be able to attack us. And with the sector pod dealt with, I figure Cowboy can evac with Leeson in order to keep him alive. The remaining 4 soldiers on the mission should be able to handle things now that the walking death machine is gone. But I accidentally misclick and put Leeson on the ground instead of evacing him. Luckily he does have 1 turn left, so we're still able to get him out in one piece, but this was really silly on my part. Now the Purifier does set a couple of our troops on fire, which is bad, but we're able to wipe out the pod on the next turn. There is one more pod after that, and it is a close call, but we finish them without taking any further damage. And once enough of our high level troops are combat ready again, we head out on the Forge mission. The Hunter is no more, and we've actually gained a bonus Advent Defector and a bonus Resistant Soldier on this one. So we're fielding a team of 8, which doesn't happen very often. So 8 soldiers, this one should be a breeze, right? Yeah, not so much. I mean, things start off well and good as we annihilate both the first pod and the sector pod quite easily, but then they start going wrong when we reach the bridge. I've sent Outrider ahead to scout the enemies and set up a Long Watch ambush with Meme. That part of the plan works fine, as thanks to Long Watch, we activate the pod on their turn. This will of course give us our entire turn to deal with them. The problem arises when the Andromedon moves further forward than I expected it. It reveals Outrider, which in turn causes the other pod of codexes that only she could see to activate. So there's way too many enemies active now, and we're way too far away to be able to deal with them effectively. So Grim ends up getting shadowbound, half the squad gets hit by a psionic bomb, Outrider gets knocked unconscious in one hit from the stun lancer, and the heavy mech drops some missiles on us. An absolutely dreadful turn. Now on our turn, we do finish the bad guys off without taking any further damage, but the bigger problem is that our resistance fighter now needs to carry Outrider, so she can't attack easily for the rest of the mission. We've effectively gone from 8 soldiers down to 6 in terms of our fighting capabilities. So despite that, we do our best and we battle our way into the building, and in the main room is an Andromedon and 2 Archons. Now we start with Demolition from Cowboy, which connects to destroy the Andromedon's cover. We then try for a chain shot with Drifter, and it's a 79% chance to hit, and we unfortunately miss. I then try for a saturation fire with Grim, but the game does that stupid thing where the highlighted area moves just as you click down on the mouse, so it ends up moving off the Andromedon. I did reload here as it was a misclick. I repeat the same process on the reload, except I don't take the chain shot with Drifter, I instead just land a single attack. I figure landing 1 shot is better than missing 2. Now usually when I reload, if the mistake was on my end, I try to play the turn exactly the same as before I reloaded, but when the reload is because of issues with the game, in this case the UI, well, that's the game's fault, not mine. So I'm going to exploit the situation to my benefit, and I do not feel bad about that, especially not in this run. Both Archons survive, so I send Vulpes out of cover to tank a hit since she has Untouchable and she was the one who killed the Andromedon's first form. I thought this was a pretty great strat on my part, but there was one fatal flaw. Vulpes doesn't have Untouchable yet. I was thinking of a different Ranger. So yeah, she's gone thanks to my stupidity, and even worse, our Advent Defector gets taken out too. So we're now down to 4 soldiers. I was hoping one of the Archons would go for Blazing Pinions, but I guess because they're inside a building, it prevents them from doing that. I'm not sure. Either way, no Blazing Pinions for us. So on the next turn, one of the Archons survives again and hits Drifter for big damage. We just don't have the firepower we need with all these casualties. So I end up carrying Vulpes to the evac zone, and including the body that you have to retrieve as part of the mission, 3 out of our 5 remaining soldiers are carrying bodies. And it's not until we get to the evac zone that I realise I forgot to carry the Advent Defector out too. We just left him there to rot. I actually felt kind of bad about this when it happened, but there's nothing we can do now, so sorry random Advent Trooper. And yeah, that was a really rough mission. But hey, there's always next time. Maybe the next mission will go better. So we have a Guerrilla Op and I move Red Devil in to finish off this sectoid, but doing that activates another pod featuring our first Gatekeeper of the run. So I move forward with Arnie to attack the pod, and that activates another one. And long story short, we end up losing Arnie because of this.
As you fade away, as you fade away.
The Sparks are really not having a good time in this run. I mean, to be fair, I don't think anyone is having a good time in this run. Now, we are still successful in the mission, but it was a high price to pay. Then we have a council mission to rescue a VIP, and the VIP is none other than our boy Metler. He may be legally blind, but having another soldier in the barracks is always a good thing, so we set off to get him back, and, well, on the second turn, I'll show you what happens.
Geht in Ordnung. Sie haben uns.
Now, I won't repeat the same joke from earlier, but needless to say, this causes us to fail our no utility items rule for a second time in this run. But you know what's even more absurd than having civilians placed this badly again and blowing our concealment again? It's that blowing our concealment triggers the Warlock to spawn in again. This mission is going exactly like the previous council mission, and that's not a good thing. This time we have Outrider and Task Manager who are still concealed, so I split them up from the rest of the group to hopefully avoid having the spectral zombies blow their concealment like what we had happen last time. My plan works and the zombies focus on the soldiers who aren't in concealment, so that's a positive, but the Warlock is now sending in 3 zombies instead of 2. Things are getting more difficult. So we battle our way through the zombies and Advent, and look at this one. Task Manager is still in concealment, and you can see very clearly that the game is indicating that his concealment will not be blown by moving onto this tile. Well, we move him there, and the Spectre instantly spots him, so thanks for being a massive liar, game, that's really helpful. And I may have reloaded here, but we do have Outrider who's still concealed. That should be enough to get us through. So we finally make it to the building housing Metler, but it's taken us a long time, mostly because of the zombies that have been slowing us down along the way. And I'm pretty sure this building has been added from the map mod. It's this tiny little ground floor that leads into the area upstairs where Metler is being detained, and it seems to be causing some performance issues for my game, but it is a very cool set piece. We activate the pod in the building and the heavy mech takes to the roof, I guess thinking this would give it a tactical advantage, but I've actually placed half the squad on the roof, so we're ready for it. You see, I got a glimpse of the pod earlier, and my plan was to attack it from 2 sides, one from the top and one from the bottom. I figured the terrain may have posed a problem, so this way no matter where Advent went when we activated, we were ready to flank them. At least that was the theory, and it worked out well. The priest does survive, but I think we're okay. That is until the priest puts Bond into stasis and the Warlock mind scorches 2 of our soldiers. And what's even worse is that I forgot the Warlock had summoned zombies the previous turn. I was too busy focusing on the pod that we activated. So Bond being in stasis means he can't get away from these zombies and they could cause big damage to him on the next turn. We get the Warlock down to 3 HP, in no small part because the hair trigger activates on the Dark Lance, giving Icicle 2 shots. However, I don't want to finish the Warlock. Now that may sound insane, but if we finish him off, that's going to cause the turn timer to start ticking down again, and I'm not sure we'll make it to the evac zone in time. I mean, we haven't even got the VIP yet. So I decide it's time to focus on the zombies instead. We're able to take down 2 of the 3, which should be enough to keep Bond alive. However, the priest mind controls our newest soldier Scorch, and the Warlock summons his spectral stun lancers in. So just like that, we've got another wave of enemies that we have to deal with. We spend the turn sending the priest into stasis in order to break the mind control, and then we take out the rest of the spectrals except for 1. I want to leave 1 alive just to keep the Warlock in stasis for another turn. This way we'll have close to a full turn to deal with him when he does exit the stasis bubble. Now Bond and Scorch do take damage, but everyone survives. and we're then finally able to finish the priest and the warlock. But it's not over yet. Oh no. The game drops in even more reinforcements on us. Now everyone, including Metla, does make it to the evac zone, but we were literally down to the last turn getting some of our troops out. I'm really sick and tired of civilians ruining our concealment. I mean, look at this. 23 enemies on a mission with no lost. This was ridiculous. Not that I should expect anything different from this run at this point. Ridiculous seems to be the name of the game. So you know what, let's just take the Warlock out so that we don't have to deal with this nonsense anymore. Now things start off really badly when our concealment ranger blunders into a badly placed pod and our concealment is blown. But hey, at least it wasn't civilians that caused it this time. Now the Dark Lance again has the hair trigger proc, which gives us an extra shot with meme, and this was really clutch. Without it, we probably wouldn't have been able to take out the Purifier, and it no doubt would have lobbed an incendiary grenade at us. So the Andromedon shell and shield bearer do survive. Red Devil is able to parry the shell's punch, and the shield bearer only activates its shield. That's what I was hoping it would do. So on the next turn, we can finish the rest of the pod, and we somehow avoided taking any damage. We got really lucky there. That was a horrible activation. So I guess the bad luck with the pod activation and then the good luck in dealing with the pod kinda balances out. And a cool thing happens with the next pod where the priest buffs the shield bearer with Holy Warrior and the shield bearer buffs the priest with its shield. Now of course doing this leaves the Advent boys with no one to actually attack us, so we wipe them out quite easily on the next turn. But hey, I said it was cool, not that it was effective. We make our way to the elevator without too many further issues. The enemies on this one were honestly easier than the enemies in the Assassin's base, which we did ages ago. That one had chrysalids and berserkers. Here, nothing apart from the Andromedon was all that much of a threat to us. I really don't understand this game sometimes. So when the Warlock does arrive, I consider shooting with Hard Viper to get the holo targeting, but then I decide we can use Run and Gun, which he's picked up as a hidden ability, and then we could use Chain Shot at point blank range. Now it's only 80% chance to hit, which in this run is a real risk, but I go for it all the same. I think it's worth it. And Hard Viper takes out the big boy with a single attack, so yeah, it was definitely worth it. This leaves the rest of the team to focus on the sarcophagus, and we do big damage to it. Now it does still take 2 turns to finish it off, but once the Warlock comes back, he only has 40% of his health, so another single attack, this time from Shockwave, annihilates him. And I have to say, after all the garbage this guy has put us through this run, taking him out so easily was very satisfying. I construct a third Spark. I don't have high hopes that he'll be sticking around for long, but I think I'm going to need him on an upcoming mission, so I figured it was worth blowing another 2 Elerium cores. We'll see if I was right or not, I guess. We have a Guerrilla Op, and we do lose another soldier, but she was only a resistance fighter. I needed someone to run an Overwatch from a heavy mech, and, well, she couldn't run fast enough, I guess. The actual XCOM soldiers all survived though, so that's good for us. And I guess this lady died as she lived, as a human mimic beacon. So it's finally time to hit the Psionic Gate mission, and this one I'm honestly more worried about than the final mission. And the reason is the burrowed chrysalids. We just don't have an effective means of defending against them. Normally I would use either battle scanners or a Bladestorm Ranger, but here, there's really nothing we can do other than to run out and just tank the hits, and if we do get poisoned, we obviously have no means of removing it. So the plan is pretty much to send Red Devil out first. Now it may not sound like much, but she has Fortress, so she can't get poisoned, and she has Sustain, so the chrysalids can't kill her instantly. And this mission is also the reason I wanted another Spark. As a backup, we can send it in as another unit that can tank hits from the chrysalids without getting poisoned. So yeah, the strategy isn't much, but it's the best that I've got. That is until during the mission, a viewer in the chat by the name of Teal Trooper gives a really good suggestion. Red Devil can form a ghost, and we can send that in. That's another unit that cannot be poisoned. Now I'm kind of embarrassed I didn't think of that myself, honestly. Now the Ghost is only able to withstand 2 attacks before it falls, but that's still 2 attacks the rest of our squad can avoid, which is really good. The Gatekeeper is active by now, and I did catch a glimpse of a pod of chrysalids behind it, so we kind of have to take this thing down without moving too much, otherwise we may activate that other pod. And I was worried about this, but as you can see, there was no need to be. 2 Grenadiers with blue screen rounds is enough to get the job done. So we obviously still need to complete the story research, and I'm just trying to level up as many of our troops while we wait. Given how late we are in the game, we still have a really small number of colonels. All the injuries we've taken have spread our troop usage out, so we haven't been able to level up as quickly as normal. Now during this waiting period, there are a few close calls, like this chrysalid turning into an Olympic sprinter and poisoning Jesus from the other side of the map. We end up having to evac him out before the poison can finish him. Luckily the rest of the team is able to beat the mission without him. Then there's also Outrider barely surviving this critical hit punch from an Andromedon shell. She hangs on with a single point of HP. Losing her at this stage would have been devastating. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but we do make it to the final 2 missions without losing any further soldiers. So let's hit the network tower and see how we go. We get really lucky with the intel upgrades, and we get the one that allows us to deploy a 4th soldier. That generally makes this mission trivially easy, and that's the case here. We're able to keep Task Manager in concealment and scout the pods, while our other 3 troops deal with any of the bad guys. And he ends up staying in concealment for almost the whole mission. It's not until the final pod that we have to break it so that he can attack. And when he does finally get to attack, it's pretty devastating. So yeah, not much to say about this one. Barring any unexpected visits from the Berserker Queen, it's a pretty easy mission at the best of times, and when you add in having that extra 4th soldier, Advent just don't stand much of a chance. So here's the squad I'm sending on the final mission, and you can see I'm sending 2 Grenadiers when I normally don't send any. They're just really useful for this run with being able to shred and having hail of bullets. And you'll also see that our Ranger Groot Farmer has the Warlock's rifle. I normally stick to shotguns on my Rangers, but Groot Farmer here has picked up Death from Above as a hidden ability. So if we can set him up on high ground, the rifle should work better than the shotgun. The aim buffs on the shotgun drop off over distance faster than the rifle. And you'll also see almost all our soldiers have Wraith suits. Given that we don't have any heavy weapons, having high mobility to make sure that we can reach the avatars to shoot at them is gonna be really important. So with all that in mind, let's go do our hero thing. We can use the commander's avatar in this one, but he can only attack with his rifle. His psi abilities are off limits, so he's gonna be a lot less useful than usual. The first 3 pods go down quite easily. Even facing off against the sector pod, we're able to leave Groot Farmer concealed. We don't even need him to attack. Now most of the squad does have blue screen rounds, so it's really not too surprising. But once pod number 4 arrives, that's when things begin getting interesting. 2 Archons and 3 Codexes, and we're really not in a very good position in terms of cover or having good shots either. So what do? Well, you remember how I said Groot Farmer has the Death from Above ability? Yeah, Death from Above is pretty good. We got lucky with that. Outrider soon spots the Gatekeeper pod. Now the team isn't quite in position to deal with it this turn, but it's standing next to an explosive chest that we can remote start. The pod may move if we wait another turn, so I take the opportunity and activate with the boom boom. And because so many of our troops have grappling hooks, plus 2 of them have death from above, we're actually able to deal with this pod without too much hassle, even though we weren't in a good position. And there is another pod of snacks to clean up after this one, but they go down pretty easily too, so on to the final chamber. We used the usual strat of disposing of the first avatar with Banish, but Outrider actually has Annihilate too, so she isn't content with just finishing the avatar, she takes down one of the Archons as well. We can easily eliminate the second one, and now the room is clear. We're off to a very good start. However, things go sideways real quick when a pod of Mutons spawns in on the right hand side of the map. I have Meme, Red Devil and Hard Viper on this side, and Mutons are pretty much the only enemy type that Red Devil cannot deal with due to their counterattack ability. So death from above with Meme is pretty much our only option, but he's not guaranteed to hit them, and even if he does, he's not guaranteed to one-shot. So he takes out one of the big boys, but the second one survives with a single point of HP. And that means that death from above doesn't proc, and Meme's turn is over. I spend a while weighing up my options, as I'm thinking I may just have to risk the melee with Red Devil and hope that counterattack doesn't trigger. That's a pretty bad strategy though. And it turns out there is a better play. See, I gave Red Devil the invert ability just before this mission. It lets her swap places with an enemy. I don't normally take this ability, but I figured going into this one, we needed as many options as we could get, and we had the AP to spare. So Red can actually swap places with the 1 HP Muton. This gives Outrider line of sight on it so she can reload and shoot, finishing it off. And then Hard Viper is able to get rid of the third one in a single hit. That was really clutch. Now it does mean that Red Devil isn't on maximum focus anymore since Exchange uses up 1 bar, but it's the best we could do in a tight situation. I could have used Volt as well, but I honestly just didn't think of that at the time, not sure why. But I think Exchange was still the better play since it's not a turn-ending ability, so Red Devil did still have an action left if we hadn't been able to one-shot that other Muton. But anyway, our troops on the right-hand side's problems are only just beginning. On the next turn, the Avatar, as well as 2 Spectres, 2 more Mutons, and 3 Chrysalids spawn in. Now the Avatar's in full cover, so I use Saturation Fire with Hard Viper. He has a stock and AP rounds, so even if his shot misses, he'll still damage the Avatar and force it to teleport. And I'm hoping it'll move to a position that's easier to hit. Now the Saturation Fire actually connects on the Avatar, which is really good. We get the Shred as well, but something goes awry with the Spectre also in the Cone of Fire. Our shot misses, but the stock doesn't inflict any damage. I've comboed a stock with Saturation Fire in the past, and missed shots should still activate the stock. I'm not sure why it didn't work here. But no time to worry about that now. The Avatar has moved right on top of the Chrysalids, so I send Red Devil in with an Ionic Storm. Now because her focus has been lowered, it doesn't do as much damage as usual. We're still able to take down 2 of the lids, and the Avatar takes damage, causing it to teleport again. Outrider has a shot, but she misses, and that was actually a clutch shot that we needed to make. I'm not sure we have anyone else in range. Well, it turns out that we do. Drifter from the other side of the map can get just into range to grapple onto the tower in the middle of the room, and from there he has an easy flanking shot on the Avatar and finishes it off. Meanwhile, Meme cleans up the rest of Advent minus 1 Spectre. It clones Red Devil, but we can easily take it out on the next turn, so that's not a problem. The trouble now seems to be on the left-hand side of the map actually. With Drifter leaving his position, Groot Farmer and the Commander's Avatar have been left alone to deal with 3 priests. This could be a problem if they all go into stasis on this turn and then start shutting down our troops with stasis and mind control on the next turn. We could realistically be left with no active soldiers on that side of the map. Now Meme is able to send one into stasis from across the chamber thanks to Squad Sight, and Drifter can actually run back far enough to get off a Saturation Fire. And then we once again get a clutch hair trigger proc, and Groot Farmer is able to fire twice with the Warlock's rifle. He sends one of the priests into stasis, and the other one he sends straight to hell. Now that does mean 2 priests are still alive as the final avatar appears, and that's obviously not great. They could still shut down multiple troops. But they are both on 1 HP, they can't go into stasis again, and with Drifter we have 3 soldiers in that general area, so if they do use mind control on us, we should be able to put them down easily enough and get our troops back. At least that's what I'm hoping. But it turns out none of my worrying actually matters, because they don't go for mind control. No, instead, the first priest uses Holy Warrior on a Muton, and the second priest, well, the second priest uses Holy Warrior on the avatar itself. And you know what happens when you eliminate a priest using Holy Warrior, right? Well, if you don't, the buffed unit drops dead when the priest does. So this 1 HP priest is now the only thing standing between us and total victory. And I couldn't believe my luck at this turn of events. Oh, bros, is he going to do it to the avatar? Bros, he just did Holy Warrior on the avatar. He just lost the campaign for his team. What a clown. Oh dear, oh dear. After all the garbage this campaign has thrown at us, in the final battle, the game hands us victory on a silver platter. This is amazing. Anyway, enough talk from me, let's finish this thing.
Here I come. Who's keeping score?
Or not. Apparently finishing the priest won't eliminate a full HP avatar. I mean, it still does big damage, but it's not an outright kill. You better update your page, XCOM Wiki. So yeah, that was kind of anticlimactic, but we can still easily finish the avatar this turn. We just use a hail of bullets with Drifter, and then, in what is a less hilarious, but perhaps more fitting end, our avatar guns down the enemy avatar. This one is over. And what can I even say about this campaign? Not since the Grenadiers only run have I had this game throw this much nonsense at me. Now, it wasn't the hardest run I've done, that's still the Psionics only one, but it was one of the most annoying. And I don't normally talk about the final statistics, but I think this one is really interesting. Out of 38 missions, we only had 11 flawless victories. So that means over 2/3 of the time, we were racking up injuries or worse. This meant we had to use more soldiers while people healed up, and this, in turn, meant the XP was more spread out and our troops leveled up more slowly. That's one of the things that made this run really difficult, and the other was just getting really rubbish RNG. So overall, this challenge was much more difficult than I expected it would be when I was going into it. I mean, I thought it was going to be tough, but this one was completely wild. And look, all I can say is that I'm glad it's done, and now I never want to speak of it again. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing. And if you want to financially support the content, the best ways to do so are by either joining my Patreon or by dropping a super thanks on the video. So that's all from me. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one, and until then, have a great day.
I don't really know what comes next, I'm just doing my best, even though I'm so stressed out. Everything just feels like a test that I fail, so depressed when I can't seem to get out. But something deep inside won't let me quit, I swear that I'm inspired.